Welcome to my video. Subscribe now. Pilot gone with captain locked outside. The morning sun stretched across the sky like melted butter, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Inside the bustling terminal of Riverside Regional Airport, Captain Michael Hart stood with his flight crew, checking his watch for the third time in as many minutes. He was a man who lived by schedules, who found comfort in the predictable rhythm of pre-flight checklists and departure times. Flight 372 to Denver, boarding in 45 minutes, he said to his crew, his voice steady and calm. Years of flying had taught him that composure was everything, that passengers could sense a captain's mood the way animals sense a coming storm. His first officer today was Emma Richardson, a talented young pilot with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She had been flying with Michael for 6 months now, and he had come to trust her instincts completely. Standing beside her was Daniel Park, their flight attendant, whose warm smile had a way of putting even the most nervous travelers at ease. Beautiful day for flying, Emma observed, gazing out at the clear blue sky through the terminal windows. Not a cloud anywhere. Michael nodded, allowing himself a small smile. After 23 years of flying, he still felt a quiet thrill before every flight, that same wonder he had experienced as a young man taking his first solo flight. The sky never grew old, never lost its magic. They made their way through the terminal, past families saying goodbye, business travelers typing urgently on laptops, and children pressing their faces against the windows to watch planes taxi and take off. The airport was its own small world, a place of constant hellos and goodbyes, of journeys beginning and ending. Outside on the tarmac, their aircraft waited like a patient silver bird. It was a Boeing 737, not the newest model but well-maintained and reliable. Michael had flown this particular plane dozens of times before. He knew its quirks, the slight whistle the ventilation system made at altitude, the way the yoke responded just a fraction of a second slower than others. The ground crew was already there, performing their own checks, loading luggage and cargo into the belly of the plane. Michael greeted them by name. He made it a point to know the people who kept his aircraft safe on the ground. Aviation was a team effort, and every person mattered. "We're going to do the exterior walk around," Michael told Emma and Daniel. "Then we'll get the cockpit set up." They circled the plane slowly, methodically. Michael ran his hand along the fuselage, checked the engines, examined the landing gear. Everything had to be perfect. There was no room for error at 35,000 feet. The sun was warm on his back, and a light breeze carried the familiar smell of jet fuel and hot asphalt. When the exterior inspection was complete, Emma climbed aboard first, making her way to the cockpit. Daniel followed to prepare the cabin. Michael lingered for a moment outside, taking in the sight of his aircraft, feeling that old familiar gratitude that he got to do this for a living. "Captain Hart," one of the ground crew members called to him. "Can you take a look at something on the rear cargo door? There's a sensor light that's acting funny." Michael didn't hesitate. "Of course. Show me." They walked together to the rear of the aircraft, and the crew member pointed to a small indicator panel. Michael crouched down, examining it carefully. The light flickered amber, then green, then amber again. It was probably nothing serious, likely just a loose connection, but probably wasn't good enough. "Not in aviation. Let me grab a flashlight from the terminal," the crew member said. "I'll be right back." "Take your time," Michael replied. "We've got time before boarding starts." He stood there, hands in his pockets, watching other planes move across the tarmac like chess pieces on a giant board. A small regional jet lifted off in the distance, climbing steeply into that perfect blue sky. He tracked its ascent, thinking about all the passengers aboard, each with their own story, their own reason for traveling. Then he heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold. The distinctive hydraulic whine of an aircraft door closing. Michael spun around and saw the main boarding door of his plane sealing shut with its characteristic heavy thunk. His heart began to pound. He ran toward the aircraft, his mind racing through possibilities. Emma was in the cockpit. Daniel was in the cabin. But why would they close the door now? They weren't even close to departure time. He reached the side of the plane and looked up at the door, now flush against the fuselage. "Emma," he called out. "Daniel." The door. There was no response. The plane sat silent, sealed, with him on the outside. Michael's hands were shaking slightly as he pulled out his phone and dialed Emma's number. Inside the cockpit, Emma heard the phone buzzing in her bag and reached for it, confused. When she saw it was Michael calling, confusion turned to concern. Captain, she answered. Where are you? I'm outside, Michael said, forcing his voice to stay calm even as panic threatened to rise in his chest. The door closed. I'm locked out. Emma's eyes widened. She looked around the cockpit, trying to process what she was hearing. What? That's impossible. We're not even. She stopped mid-sentence as the reality sank in. Oh no. Oh no. No, no. She unbuckled and rushed out of the cockpit, nearly colliding with Daniel in the narrow aisle. Daniel, did you close the boarding door? No, Daniel said, his face pale. I thought you were still waiting for the captain to board. I've been in the galley. They both hurried to the door. Emma examined the controls, her pilot training taking over. The door was fully sealed, locked from the inside. Opening it now would require following specific procedures, and more importantly, it would require ground crew assistance from the outside. There's an electrical malfunction, Emma said, her voice tight. The door closed on its own. This shouldn't be possible. Through the small window in the door, they could see Michael standing on the tarmac, phone pressed to his ear. Emma's phone rang again. Emma, listen carefully, Michael said when she answered. His voice was steady now, falling into the calm, authoritative tone he used during emergencies. I need you to contact ground operations and maintenance. We have a serious door malfunction. Do not attempt to open it without ground crew assistance. Understand? Yes, Captain, Emma replied. I'm on it. But even as she said it, they both knew what this meant. Without the captain aboard, the flight couldn't depart. Without the door being opened properly and safely, passengers couldn't board. And with a mechanical issue like this, the aircraft would need to be thoroughly inspected before it could fly anywhere. Flight 372 to Denver was not going anywhere anytime soon. Michael stood on the tarmac, watching through the small window as Emma coordinated with ground operations. He felt a strange mix of emotions. Frustration, certainly. Concern for the passengers who would be delayed. But underneath it all, something else. Something unexpected. A sense of wonder at the mysterious nature of machines, at the unpredictability that existed even within the most carefully controlled systems. He had spent 2 decades mastering the art of flying, of controlling these magnificent machines, and yet here he was, locked out by a door that had decided to close on its own. The ground crew arrived quickly, followed by maintenance personnel with their toolboxes and diagnostic equipment. They examined the door mechanism while Michael explained what had happened. Inside the plane, Emma made the announcement to ground operations that the flight would be delayed indefinitely due to a mechanical issue. An hour passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Passengers who had been preparing to board were rerouted to other flights or given meal vouchers and told to wait. Michael stood with the maintenance crew, watching them work, occasionally offering his observations. Never seen anything quite like this, said Marcus, the senior maintenance technician, a man with gray hair and 40 years of aviation experience. The door mechanism just activated on its own. No command from the cockpit, no accidental button press. Like the plane decided it was time to close up shop. Machines don't make decisions, Michael said. Marcus smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. Don't they, though? I've been working on aircraft my whole life, Captain. Sometimes I swear they have personalities. This one just wanted a little attention, I think. They finally got the door open 2 hours later. Michael climbed aboard, feeling oddly like a stranger entering someone else's home. Emma and Daniel stood there, both looking exhausted and relieved. Welcome aboard, Captain, Emma said with a tired smile. Michael couldn't help but laugh. The absurdity of it all, the reminder that even in a profession built on precision and control, chaos could find a way in. Thank you, First Officer Richardson. It's good to be back. The maintenance team traced the problem to a faulty sensor that had sent an erroneous signal to the door system. It was replaced, tested, and tested again. By the time everything was certified safe, it was late afternoon. Most of their original passengers had been accommodated on other flights. But there were 12 people left, 12 travelers who had decided to wait, who still needed to get to Denver that evening. Michael looked at their names on the passenger list. He thought about them sitting in the terminal all day, their plans disrupted, their patience tested. Let's get these folks home, he said to Emma. The second pre-flight check was thorough, almost ritualistic. Michael examined every inch of the aircraft, inside and out. He ran his hand along the door frame, feeling the new sensor mechanism that had been installed. When he finally settled into the captain's seat, the cockpit felt different somehow. More alive, more present. Emma sat beside him, and together they ran through their checklists. Each item was called out, verified, confirmed. The familiar rhythm was soothing, bringing order back to a day that had spiraled into chaos. The 12 passengers boarded. Michael made a point of greeting each one personally, thanking them for their patience. An elderly couple, a young mother with a sleeping baby, a businessman who had missed 2 earlier flights, a college student heading home. Each one smiled, nodded, said it was no problem. But Michael could see the relief in their eyes, the gratitude that they were finally going to reach their destination. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Flight 372 finally pushed back from the gate. Michael guided the plane toward the runway, feeling the weight of the aircraft, the responsibility of the souls on board. Riverside Tower, Flight 372 ready for takeoff, he said into his radio. Flight 372, you are cleared for takeoff. Have a good flight, Captain Hart. We were all rooting for you down here. Michael smiled. The whole airport had probably heard about the captain locked outside his own plane. It would be a story told and retold, laughed about over coffee in the terminal cafeteria. And that was okay. Sometimes the stories we tell about our struggles become the memories we treasure most. The engines roared to life, and the plane accelerated down the runway. Michael felt the familiar shift as they reached rotation speed, the moment when the aircraft stopped being a vehicle bound to Earth and became something else entirely. Something free. They climbed into that sunset sky, leaving behind the chaos of the day. Inside the cabin, the 12 passengers settled into their seats, some sleeping, some reading, all of them finally on their way home. Emma handled the communications with air traffic control while Michael flew, his hands steady on the yoke. At 35,000 feet, the world below became a patchwork of lights as day surrendered to night. Michael looked out at the vast darkness, at the stars beginning to emerge, at the thin line of orange still clinging to the horizon. You know, Emma said quietly, in all my training, they never covered what to do when your captain gets locked out of the plane. Michael chuckled. Life has a way of teaching us lessons that aren't in any manual. Today reminded me that no matter how much we plan, how much we prepare, sometimes things go wrong in ways we never expected. And that's okay. Because we adapt. We solve problems. We take care of each other and our passengers. That's what makes us good at this. Emma nodded, understanding passing between them without more words being necessary. They landed in Denver as the last light faded from the sky. The touchdown was smooth, gentle, like setting down a sleeping child. Michael taxied to the gate and shut down the engines, listening to them wind down, that descending whine that marked the end of every flight. The 12 passengers deplaned, each one stopping to thank Michael and Emma, to shake their hands, to acknowledge the odyssey they had all shared. The elderly couple even gave Michael a piece of hard candy from the wife's purse, an old-fashioned gesture that made him smile. When the plane was finally empty and quiet, Michael sat in the captain's seat for a long moment. He thought about the strange journey of this day, about being locked out of his own aircraft, about the reminder that control was always an illusion, that life was unpredictable and beautiful precisely because we could never know what would happen next. Emma appeared at the cockpit door. Ready to head home, Captain? Michael stood, stretching his tired muscles. Yes, more than ready. They walked through the empty plane together, through the cabin where 12 grateful passengers had sat, past the galley where Daniel had spent the day waiting, to the door that had started it all. Michael paused there, placing his hand on the frame one last time. Thank you, he whispered to the aircraft, to the machines and systems that kept them all safe, to the unpredictable universe that reminded him daily that he was alive. Then Captain Michael Hart stepped off the plane and into the Denver night, carrying with him a story he would tell for years to come, a reminder that sometimes the best journeys are the ones that don't go according to plan. The next morning, at another airport, another flight awaited. And Michael would be there, ready to try again, ready for whatever challenges the sky decided to send his way. Because that's what pilots do. They fly, they adapt, they keep going, always forward, always upward, always home.